Yo, it's Dan the Money Man. Welcome to this episode on the topic of savings. All right, today we're going to talk about savings. Now, first of all, I know you guys came to this channel not to talk about savings, but you came here because you want to learn about investing, right? And I understand that. But the reason why we're talking about saving today is because savings is the beginning of investing. Like, you really can't invest unless you have something to invest. And how you get that something is what we're going to talk about today. All right, so we're talking about savings. Stay tuned, we'll get right into it. All right, cool. So what is savings? All right, so first of all, you got to understand that you need money to make money. All right, you can't make money out of thin air, right? So you have to have something, and then all investing will do is make that something a lot more than what you'd have had if you kept the money in the bank. All right, so that's what investing is. So that making money is what saving is. Now, for most people, saving is tough. All right, for myself too. But it comes down to the reason why you're saving, right? So saving will be a test to see how much you really want that thing that you want to learn to invest for. And so as you think about savings, you really have to understand that it's really about two things. It's about discipline and consistency. So those are the two things that you're going to hear the most in this video, and because that's central to savings. Now, another thing that you should understand about savings is that savings is really the beginning of investing. What I mean by that is, how do you know you're going to be a good investor? You don't know that, right? And so savings really is the first test for you to think and assess yourself whether you're going to be good investing or not, because the best investors in the world are the best savers. So as you invest, the skills that you need to invest are the same skill that you need to apply in your savings. So really, this is more of a test or a practice per se. Let's say practice. It's a practice run for you before you start to play with your money, real money, okay? Because when you start to invest, fundamental to investing is the concept of understanding how profitable a company is. And so when you know a company is profitable, that company has to be able to demonstrate basically the amount of money or amount of value they've created over the years. And the process of assessing the value is the same for every company in the world, and that is how much money are they making and how much money are they able to put aside. So how much is their revenue compared to the expenses. So that's what saving is about. So as you begin to save and as you begin to invest, just always remember that just like you're going to look at these companies and assess whether these companies are good to invest in or not, you're going to think of yourself as a company. So you're an entity yourself. It's just that you're not as complicated as the companies that you're going to invest in, but at the very basic level, your financials and the way you assess your financials is the exact same tool that you're going to use to assess a company. So this is really important and critical, and that's why I think that it's worth to have a video just on this topic so you can understand that this is what the rest of investing is going to look like. It's about going down to those numbers and understanding that it's all about how much money you make and how much money you spend and what's left over. That's what saving is. All right, so let's get right into it. So the first step in savings is really to understand what the goal is, right? What are you saving for? Okay. My mentor's partner always reminds me that you gotta have a strong reason why for doing something, because if you don't have a reason why, you can't stick to it. You won't do it long term, and savings are long term. All right. So this is the reason why. So you really have to identify what your reason for saving is, and really, if it's important to you, you're gonna prioritize it. That's what is the very first step, because savings is not easy. Saving is tough. Like, I know that because I've had periods where I'm saving up for something and I wasn't able to do it simply because something always comes up that made me basically reach into my savings, take it out, use it for that thing that came up. But realistically, the key to savings is respect that goal, and once you put money into your savings, you don't touch it. Right? So this goal could be something like, let's say you're in high school and you want to buy your first car, right? So that's a legitimate goal, because that's actually, most people go through that. I remember I went through that. I saved, my first car was actually it was, at the time I thought it was the best car in the world, but looking back, it was kind of basic, right? So, but I had to save up for that car for basically, it was a while, all right? And it was $2,000, all right? Looking back now, I'm thinking, I could probably save that in a month, right? But back then it was a long time I had to save up for that $2,000. So that could be a reason for you too. That could be a reason for wanting to save. Or maybe let's say you've already made you've already worked for a long time, you've got a car. Now you're thinking, okay, the next step in my life, I want to have a house, all right? So basically saving for that deposit could be your reason why. And the next step, okay, another one, let's say you have no idea what you're saving for, right? Which is fine too. You have no real reason to save now, but you understand that at some point you're gonna need money, all right? Let's say, I don't know, think about retirement maybe. Maybe you wanna retire with a decent amount of savings, right? And when you're young, you don't think about retirement because you think, oh, I'll deal with that when it comes. But realistically, the earlier you start to save for retirement, the better, because if you don't have savings in your retirement, or if you don't have enough money going into your retirement, you're going to be on Centrelink forever. Like, that's what it means, because once you retire, you no longer produce income. So if you hadn't saved over the years, where's that money going to come from? Now, if you live in Australia, you're lucky because Centrelink will pay you, or the government will look after you. But if you live other parts of the world where the government doesn't support people in that regard, then what do? You can't expect your kids to pay for you. So that's what saving is, right? So once you've identified the goal for savings, right, now you got to understand, okay, cool, how much do I need to achieve that goal? So, and then you got to set yourself the target, right? So the target is how much time from now to attain that goal, right? So if it's months, how many months from today until you reach that goal? If it's years, how many years from now until you reach that goal? So those are the three things that you need before you can even start savings. For what's that goal? What are you saving for? Second, how much is that going to be? How much do you need to attain that goal? And then third, how much time have you given yourself to get to that goal? So those are the three things that are very, very important before you can even start savings, because once you identify that really will determine how much successful you can be as a saver. All right, guys, so before we get into the specific on how you could save and ways that you could sort of do things differently to achieve that saving goal, please understand that this is not financial advice, all right? I am not giving you financial advice. I'm sharing with you just tips that you could use just to do what you're doing better, all right? So how do you actually save, all right? What steps are involved to saving, right? So there are 4 major steps in savings, right? And now you can do this your own way, but these 4 steps, they're basically at the very core of savings. All right, so the first one that we're gonna start with is budget. You've got to do your budget, all right? It's something that people don't like, it's, I don't know, whatever, but you have to do your budget. That's the very, very first step in doing, in savings, all right? So what does that look like? All right, so at the very top, you write weekly budget if you get paid weekly. So whatever period you get paid, write that at the very top, all right? So it'd be like, weekly budget. I get paid monthly, so for me, in my case, it'll be monthly budget, right? And the very first thing on that list is literally, so you put the title at the very top, and then you split it right in the middle. So you grab a piece of paper, split it right in the middle. One side, you're gonna write income, and on the other side, you're gonna write expenses. On the income side, you write down how much you get from work or whatever activities that you do to earn money, how much you get paid from those activities, you write that down. All right, so let's say you're a regular person who just has one job. So what you want to do is you want to go through your pay slip, all right, and then look at your net pay. All right, so not your gross pay, not whatever, it's the net pay, the amount that actually goes into your bank account. That's what you write there. All right. Now, if you also have a side hustle, right, whatever that you do on the side, if you earn income from that, put all that income there. All right, so this is where you list everything that comes into your bank account or into your shoebox, whatever that you do to earn an extra bit of cash, list everything that comes in, write it on that side, right? And then on the other side, you write your expenses, right? So these are the things that you spend money on. Every single thing that you spend money on, you write it on this other side. So it's almost like a 2-step process with your expenses. You need to first write down what those expenses are, and then how much you spend on those things, whether it's weekly or monthly, and you write that next to them. And then you want to basically convert them into the frequency of when you get paid. So if you get paid weekly, you want to convert all your expenses into your weekly expense. You want to convert your expenses into weekly. Now, the next step is, so once you've list all the expenses, right? So these are radio, your bills, electricity, all that stuff, you list all there. And then at the bottom of that, before you do the total, you got to do at the bottom of it, you got to do the things that you spend money on for yourself. Right? So things like, when you go out, how much money do you normally spend? Really self-assess how much you spend money when you get paid. Every single thing that you spend money on, listed there, right? And then do the total. So tally all that up. So make, so you basically sum it all up, and at the very bottom write total, and then you write that amount, right? Same thing with expenses, you write that amount. Now, that's really what budgeting is. Your total income, all right, and your total expenses will determine how much money you have left over. So what you want to do now, the next step now is to basically take your expenses away from your total income. So you go total income minus expenses, or total expenses. Now, you want to pray to God, you want to pray that that number is more than zero. All right, your net income should be more than zero. Now, if it's not, you got some serious, readjustment to do with your income. Sorry, with your expenses. You really have to seriously go back to your expenses and look at what's important there and what's not. Because if that net income is less than zero, what that means is you're gonna have to borrow money from somewhere to sustain your expenses, to sustain your living, your lifestyle. So that money has to come from other sources other than yourself to sustain that. So that means you have to take a loan. You have to go borrow money from other people. You have to do all these other things that are really not sustainable for you to maintain your lifestyle. So my advice would be, if you really are in that situation, you need to reassess everything you spend money on. So maybe thinking, what if it's zero? So if it's zero, if that net income is zero, what that means is you are basically you're living paycheck to paycheck, right? What that means is everything that comes in goes out. There's nothing left over. And that's not as bad as being negative, but at the same time, it just means that you can't save, you can't invest, you're just basically living in a cycle. You are stuck in that cycle where you're not really going anywhere, right? You're just maintaining your current lifestyle. Same thing. If you're in that situation, you really need to reassess that. So our goal in this video is to make sure that you are not in either having zero or negative. We want to put you on the other side where it's more than zero, because then you have something to save, all right? And so there's no magic to saving, really. If you don't have a net income of more than zero, you just can't save. It's just a fact, right? So now we're gonna work. So the challenge for you really is to making sure that you have that net income more than zero, and that's your challenge. So start there. Now we're gonna consider, when you do have more than zero, what do you do with that, all right? So that's the next part. Because we're still not finished with the budget, right? You still have to understand that there are some costs or some expenses that come without you they just get you off guard, right? So that's another thing that you got to put in there. And we're going to call that short term or emergency. Call it emergency. So that is what is going to come in. Let's say, perfect example. Let's say you're driving, and then for some reason you're distracted, and then you run through a red light, God forbid, right? But if that were to happen, and then you don't get into a car crash, you're going to get a fine, right? That fine is not in your budget, so you need to figure out a way to pay for that. And so that's what we're going to call it emergency, right? Understand what that is, and then write that down as well and budget for it. Because if you don't budget for it and you don't account for it, then you think it's going to come out of your savings. And what we're trying to do here is not to touch the savings under any circumstance, because that's what the whole discipline thing is. All right, so that's basically almost the end of the budget, all right? Now, the last thing in the budget, this is the last thing, and it's almost like, actually no, not the last thing, but this is before the last thing. And this is your spend money, right? You need to treat yourself. Just because you're saving doesn't mean that you have to suffer. You don't have to live poor because you're saving. You don't have to live a crappy lifestyle just because you're saving, right? So you have to budget for all the things that you spend money on, all your vices, right? You need to budget for that as well, because if you don't budget for it, then you're going to be miserable, because you won't be able to do them, right? And if you do them, obviously it's going to mess up your whole finances. So it's also very important to budget for that. Now, I like to go out every weekend, every now and then. And when I do go out, I might spend a couple $100, right? So for me, I've noticed, okay, cool. In the last, 5 times I went out, I spent that much money. That means I can take the average of that and budget for that. So the next time when I do go out, I do have that something to spend my money on. So remember that. So that's the other thing. Call it spend money or me money. Budget for that also. Now, after you do that, so you add that to your expenses too, or you take it away from your net income. Now, what's left over is how much you can actually save. So that's how much money that you can put aside for that goal that you really have been looking forward to having. The next step in your savings journey is to sort out your banking. You need to sort out your banking. So the next point really is about having multiple bank accounts. I recommend 4 accounts. So you need to have 4 bank accounts. Now, in the olden days, the banks would charge you about $10 per account. But these days, a lot of banks don't charge you for that because they understand it's important for people to have multiple accounts because it really helps you manage your money better. So the first account, you want to call it everyday money or just everyday account. Call it everyday account. And so that's the account that you get paid in, and that's the account that you set your direct debits for your expenses or your bills, and everything comes out from there, right? Your second account, we're going to call that short-term savings or emergency savings, whatever you're comfortable calling it, call it that, because that's the account that all your fines or your emergency things that come up, they're going to go in that account, right? The third account, we're going to call that me money. So that's your spend money. So that's the account that you want to use when you go out. That's the account that you're going to spend money on things like, I don't know, clubbing, lunches, whatever your vices are, all that stuff will come out from that account, right? So you're going to call that me money, all right? Now, the last account is your savings account. So I wouldn't call it savings account because that takes away the seriousness and the importance of it. So what I would call it the goal. Whatever that goal is that you're saving for, call it that. If you're saving for a car, call it car. All right. So if you're saving for a house, for example, call it house money or just house. So, or my house or my first house. You need to call it the goal because that will remind you why that much money is in there, and it will remind you how far you are from that goal. So you won't look at like money to be spent. You're going to look at that as how far am I from my goal. So you call it that. You understand? We've got 4 accounts. That's in the journey of saving. 4 accounts. All right, you get that? 4. All right. So I had to slip in there because my vice is watches. I like to spend money on nice watches. So I do save up for my watches. This one was actually a gift, a birthday gift. So I'm just showing off to the person who bought the gift for me. So thank you. But anyway, so whatever it is you spend money on, you remember you can't take it any other places but from that me money account, and make sure it's good because then you can take care of yourself. First thing you need to do every time you get paid is to take out your savings. First thing. I know most people say to you, oh no, look, do a different way. After you pay your expenses, then you transfer it. No. Discipline yourself, because if that goal is so important to you, you need to prioritize it. Put the money straight into it. Don't look at it, don't touch it, just gone. So you then take out money for the other accounts and you transfer them for the other accounts. I want to give an example, all right, about what consistency looks like and discipline looks like. I had my first job when I was 16 years old, right? Now, if you can guess it, actually comment what you think that first job was, right? But my first job I was 16 years old and I was getting paid $12 an hour, all right? And I would do approximately 15 hours every week. And so I would take home about 180 because back, if you earn so little, you don't get taxed as much, right? So I would take home literally all the money I was working for. And so I would take home $180. All right, and I'm in high school. I'm balling, right? I'm going hard. But imagine if I put aside $50 every single week when I got paid. All right, I'm 29 today. Now imagine for the last 13 years, because I think that's how it's going to be. That's quick math. 29 takes 16. I think it's 13. All right. So if I put aside $50 every single week for the last 13 years, think about how much money I would have today. It's just sitting in an account somewhere that I haven't even been looking at. And that's what I want you to think of it the same way. Regardless what happened, just put that money aside. So if I had done that, guess how much money I would have had now? So that's $33,800 that I would have had today in an account sitting somewhere, just from putting $50 a week since I started working, and that's only 13 years ago. That's the power of savings. Now, let's just assume that knowing that that's what I could have had now I want to do this now. I want to be like, you know what, that's really powerful. I want to do that now for myself, right? For the next 13 years, how much money will I have if I put aside a quarter of my income away without looking at it for the next 13 years? So let's assume that most people get paid $900, a week. Let's just assume that it goes into your account. So every single week, let's just assume that I get $900 every single week, right? And then 25% of that $900 is 225 roughly, right? You take that 225 and you times that by 52, you might get, I think it's about 11,700. 11,700 times 13 years, that's probably $150,000 around there, all right? That's how much money I would have had after 13 years. That's a lot of money, right? That's the power of this. So consistency, put in practice, that's exactly what it looks like. And you do this for yourself, figure how much money this would look like for yourself if you really commit for the next, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years, whatever it is. Just look at it and be like, that's how much money you could have. Now, in the next video, we're going to talk about investing, right? So investing really is almost like it's like a booster. It's like steroids. You know, when you're working out, right? And you want to boost your, you know what I'm saying? You want to get those gains. So really, you can't get those gains without working out. So you still have to work out. So think of savings as working out, but then that booster that you're going to get from the juice, right? That's what investing is. And so we're going to go through that in the next video. And then we're going to talk about ways that you could actually save your money in a manner that you can be assured to have it long term. All right. So that's the next topic in the next video. We're going to talk about investing. I know that's why you came to the channel, and that's exactly what we're going to go through. So stay tuned. Share the video, like and subscribe, and don't forget to press the notification bell, and I'll see you next video. Peace and love, go make the money, and I'll see you then.